Hey, Russ.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
So I think we should start off by just saying who we are and why we ended up doing this. That makes sense to you?
Yes.
All right, cool. So I'm YahNé Ndgo. I am born and raised here in the so-called Philadelphia, part of the Lenape-Hoking territory. And I'm an organizer, organized with a range of different organizations. I'll just leave it at that. And who are you?
My name is Russell Shoatz III, and I am the son of Russell Maroon Shoatz, U.S. held political prisoner. And I do work around political prisoners, but a ton of social justice work that goes from my company building Fearless Futures to, work with Jericho and everything in between.
Awesome. Yeah. So we kind of spontaneously decided to have this conversation. Just yesterday was the start of Black August, and we were talking about what's happening in Black August and maybe some of what may not be happening. Right now is a time where there's a lot of awakening seems to be happening within the consciousness of our community. So a lot more people are being introduced to Black August than those who knew about it, or how much of our community knew about it, even just like 10 years ago.
Right.
And so people's introduction is different and their understanding of it is different. And so as we were talking about that, we decided that maybe we could make a contribution to the reality or to the understanding of Black August, even as we're trying to learn it.
Yeah. I thought in that process of us saying we would like to put something together for Black August. One of the biggest things to me was the educational piece. And in that educational piece, just making sure that we were vulnerable enough and our egos were out the way, and me and you weren't being performative.
Right.
And that, we would just come here to humbly try to submit some information from our hearts and our souls to people to try to learn about Black August. But I think the quote is important that comes from, Blood in My Eye, from George Jackson's book. And it runs down not just the names of some key people, but kind of a spirit and an idea, And so I think it'd be cool if we put that out to folks and allow that to be at least a base, and we go from there.
All right, so I'm going to read just a little bit out of Blood in My Eye. So, we know George Jackson is one of the central figures around which Black August is celebrated and understood. And he contributed 2 books to the movement, Soledad Brother and Blood in My Eye, which was released right before he was assassinated. And so we chose a little part of this preface to read. This is page 10 on the preface and 11. So he says, I've been in rebellion all my life. That's where he starts talking about that history of having engaged in activities that caused him to be targeted by the punitive system and being in and out of jail for a while. And then he says that the turning point in his life came when he says, I met Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Engels, and Mao, and they redeemed me. For the first 4 years, and this is while he was in prison, I studied nothing but economics and military ideas. I met the Black guerrillas, George Big Jake Lewis and James Carr, W.C. Nolan, Bill Christmas, Tony Gibson, and many others. We attempted to transform the Black criminality into a Black revolutionary mentality. And what did you think about that quote?
I think it's a full quote in the context of there's so much underlying there. I want to say right off that there is something that we need to work on in this vulnerability, and that is the cult of personality, the hero worship, and so I love George. I love everything he represents, but I think one of the things that is stated there is that George was, like we all are, socialized and nurtured into a criminal mentality, got to prison, read things, and met key people. because a lot of the George just comes across as just George just existed and then just was bad George. And nothing ever happens like that. There were obviously people who nurtured him. There was reading, there was study, there was vulnerability, there was ignorance. And then there was knowledge at some point. Out of that ignorance became, study. And so I think those things are very key because we have to walk those paths too. We have to be vulnerable at some point. We have to turn to other sources. We have to internally kind of break all of those sources down and all those things. And I think that's something that has to be said about George and about not just George, but the Black guerrilla family, about that whole movement, about Black August is that there is a level of commitment, vulnerability. We hear about the commitment. We hear about the discipline. Oh, you gotta be disciplined. You gotta be like George. But George has a vulnerable side. You could see that around his brother's death and things like that. There's some vulnerability there.
Right. And, so one of the things that we said before, no such thing as a stupid question. And so like that vulnerability piece around us acknowledging what we don't know, not feeling like we have to show up. If I'm a revolutionary, that means I'm supposed to know everything. That means that I'm supposed to have all of the answers. That means that I'm supposed to know all of the people and all of the histories.
Sure. And all of the books and all of the names.
Exactly.
And all of the,
yeah. And then when you don't, then sometimes we feel like we have to hide what we don't know. We have to pretend we know things that we don't know. And that prevents our growth. And that was the thing that you were talking about that I thought was really, that I really appreciated was the importance of us reminding ourselves and encouraging each other to actually be vulnerable around our learning and to let our egos kind of like fall to the side so that we can actually become the revolutionaries that the movement needs us to be.
Sure.
Right. So, one of the things that you said is, and you can correct me on how you say this, but that you have to, something about like how you have to be your best self.
Sure. So one of the things that George is modeling for us is turning from, we talked about the caterpillar butterfly type of process. And I think some of us go through this in life, inevitably. And his kind of looks like it looks very similar to Malcolm and some other folks in the context of having a criminal element and recognizing and understanding that I had been socialized into that. And now I need to bring my best self to the table. And my best self may require me to extract myself from those things first, kind of get myself together, kind of make sure I'm emotionally stable, make sure I'm mentally stable, because through this process, there's a lot of mental illness. Right. And that's something we're not, honest and vulnerable enough about. Also, there's some mental illness that is real and it exists and we should own it and be okay with it. Because even in some of our history, we don't look at mental illness the same way as people look at mental illness today and in America and in a Western context. Sometimes mental illness was looked at as spiritual stuff or, a special person had some things that were living in a space that we weren't living in and people valued that more than they value it now. Right. And so we have to be okay with those things. We also have to be okay with the fact that a person like George he got to a space and some of these things that you hear from him and some of the quotes and all of that, he's gotten to a space to where a big question around mortality, he questioned his mortality. Mm-hmm. I live, die, whatever it is. And I think those things need to be done before we actually think that we could do a certain level of movement work. There's all kinds of places where you could fit in. Right. But one of the things we recognize and know through the COINTELPRO piece, and Malcolm said it, is that you want to get back in the alley if you're not really about this life or you're not prepared to give your life for it, because they will take your life. Right. When you get out there and say, hey, I'm doing this for the people, whatever, like they will take your life. And you don't need to be George Jackson. You can be George Floyd. They will take your life. So if you haven't dealt with that mortality question, then they can leverage your life against you. Right. And I think George knew that right off and was like, okay, like I understand. So if we're going to leverage life on life, then we have to kind of level up. And you see all of that in his kind of, and I think a lot of us, that's a part of the equation that we haven't dealt with. Really, but in prison, of course, a lot of times you just have to deal with that. That tomorrow somebody might shake you, whatever. And that's a real question. Yeah. So like putting our ego to the side, doing the internal work
and, and then allowing ourselves externally to still be refined and developed by our community, including our community of books and the community of writers, so that we have the ability to actually become our best selves and to sharpen ourselves and each other so that we're strong enough to actually win this war. Right? Yeah. So in the spirit of that, we should start talking about Black August, right?
Yes. I think it's very important when we talk about Black August is to be very inclusive of those who actually started it, and birthed it. And as you heard George say, that he met people from the Black guerrilla family when he was not politically educated.
Right.
And some of those people obviously helped in his growth and development. And, in his growth and development, he obviously surpassed some of them.
Right.
And his understanding, his thrill, and his thrive to just get that information. And they respected that in the circle, and they elevated him as a person ideologically that could help them kind of get to where they were trying to go.
Right.
But understanding Black August, for me, that piece is important, but also just the fact that Black August is an Afrocentric celebration, holiday of freedom fighters, a whole month, not just one day, which I think is important. It's one of the longest months you pick the longest month, not February.
Right.
And we got the whole month, and it's about, right now, I'm on a master cleanse, not just for September, but I'm a master cleanse. I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna do whatever. So these are things that Black August is asking of its participants. Black August is again, Afrocentric holiday around freedom fighters and people who have done this style of work of changing themselves from one element to another element. All of our people aren't criminal elements, but it may be whatever. I might just be unconscious. I might not be healthy. I might be out of shape mentally. I might not be reading. All of those things in August you can focus on and get groups, teams, dolo by yourself. One of the great things about Black August is that it doesn't have that tight framework. Mm-hmm. Like you can create your Black August.
Right.
For YahNé, that YahNé needs X, Y, and Z. YahNé needs this, she needs that. In August, she gets that.
Right.
And in August, I need not to smoke marijuana. I need not to be drinking alcohol. This is for me. Right. It's not everybody else's Black August.
Right.
My Black August is devoid of alcohol. It's devoid of sex. It's devoid of any levels of debauchery that I may engage in throughout.
Or enlightenment, depending on how you think of it.
Exactly. And so, but I pick and choose my own. And I love that about Black August, that you can, and there's no kind of judgment, per se. So.
Right. So Black August, for me, I think I see it as a time of reverence of our freedom fighters. So, and particularly, our martyrs, of the movement, also our political prisoners and those who are just fully in the mode of revolution and revolutionary work. And then also, as you were talking about as it relates to your own experience, a time of study, of training, of fasting and fighting, right? So, a lot of people think about, I think the study, well, first, I think a lot of people think of Black August from that first part of that reverence piece, which is really important. But that second piece of how we actually bring Black August, that Black August is about our own development. I think that's the part that was the second part of what we were talking about yesterday on the first day of Black August that really, I think inspired my interest in us having this conversation, is really reinforcing the personal development aspect of Black August, personally developing yourself in the context of preparing for a revolution, in particular, but a person could enter it around that personal development piece in general, sure. Right? And even if they aren't at a space where they see themselves as revolutionaries, but certainly I do feel, and you feel differently about this, I do feel that it is seeking to gear us towards a more revolutionary form of study, that we study things that really are oriented to the transformation of the conditions of our community and understanding what those conditions are, how we may reinforce and support them, how we may be impacted by them, how we can transform them so that we can begin to be part of a larger collective that is doing that kind of work and do it effectively. That's how I see the primary encouragement of Black August, that it is centered around developing yourself further along as a revolutionary. Do you agree with that?
Yes, 110%. I think it's on point. I think the other thing too, to what you're saying is that the great thing about Black August is that yes, you get to create and say, well, I need to tweak it a little this way for me. And that is super unique. And,
like there's not a curriculum, like there's not the Black August curriculum. And if you haven't read these books or if you're not doing this stuff this year, you're not doing Black August.
And of course, people have tried to frame that, and have tried to create boxes for it. But if you do the research, it's clear to see that it's set up to not be boxed. And, most things, I don't want a blanket statement, but a lot of strategies that come out of prison have to have multiple folds because if it don't work this way, we got to go this way. Right. Or if the guards show up, we got to do this. If this happened, then we got it. So they are used to having multiple folds and it's no guarantee that everything's going to work, but we need to be prepared for all of the different scenarios.
So how were you introduced to Black August?
Wow. I was introduced to Black August via prisoners. At least 20 years ago, some elder prisoners were having conversations about why don't we do Black August events. And myself and a whole bunch of other people who were supporting them, writing them, blah, blah, blah. And they were saying, we think that you guys should, do more work around Black August, and that could be a way to help put out information around our political prisoners. So there was an intersection between Black August and the political prisoners, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, it's funny because I was just on the phone with, Dawood Lee, who's in the prison right now and was talking about Black August stuff. And he was like, I knew you would know about Black August. And ironically, I've only known about Black August for a few years, right? So, on the flip side, like when I was all the way back in 5th grade and I went to a new school, there's a school called Masterman that starts 5th grade. And when they were introducing us to the library and they showed different books, and one of the books that they showed was Richard Wright's Black Boy. And it was like, this is a new book in the library, and they showed other books, and then everybody finished and then we could go and check out books. I immediately ran and got Black Boy. And one of my classmates was like, I knew you would get that Black book. So I had this this kind of persona, really being all about my Blackness, loving things that are Black centered, as a part of my love for life and love of the world, but just loving myself. Mm-hmm. And yet, even with that, even as someone who has been organizing in different ways over the course of my whole life, really, and trying to figure out ways to transform the struggles that I was observing. I didn't have a lot of struggles, growing up, but I saw a lot of struggle and wanted to transform it. And with the context of all of that and all the work that I was doing, I only met Black August within the last few years. Mm-hmm. And, and I want to articulate that particularly because like what we were talking about before, like this idea that you're supposed to know everything already, right? And so you could feel like, oh, I was supposed to have always known about it, or I just learned about it and I should have known about it. I call myself this kind of organizer. I call myself this kind of revolutionary. Sure. And
we have that weight on us all of the time in the context of perceived expectations of the movement, other folks. And some people will project that onto you too. Do you know this? Oh, you don't know such and such. Oh, you never heard of blah, blah, blah. I love to engage in that. No, tell me, please. I'm excited that I'm ignorant.
Right. Cause now I get to grow. Yeah.
Please tell me about what I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing to embody, and we can encourage each other to do that. And I think we can also encourage people to be, to offer more grace to the other members of our community around what they don't know, and encouragement instead of embarrassment or shame. Right. Sure. And so, you could be surprised, but that doesn't mean that, that we should project shame and
not just projecting shame, but like you said, being more empathetic, Even in the way that we present information. So if you know about Black August, it's a way that you could present it that it lands on people so that if they don't know about it, it doesn't come across as if you're trying to one up them or if you're trying to say, hey, you don't know about information. There's ways to present information to people that, covers their vulnerability and shows some vulnerability from your end that you're not just trying to kind of ego or performance one up them.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of that exists, but it's good that we try to, work against that and also just, be open to those people who are doing a performative thing and just say, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
You want it? Your performance is just giving away all well, give it up.
Right. Yeah, I like that too. So how do we actually do Black August? Right. So what are things that you have done, things that other people have done? You were talking about a little bit with your cleanse.
I've seen so many beautiful different iterations of Black August that it's helped me. I watch other people and what they're doing. I'm like, oh snap, I might do that next year.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, you fasting and you doing like this, or oh, you just reading this stuff, or oh, you doing this, whatever. And I just kind of look out and about people and see what they're doing. And then, just the last few years, I know through my culinary stuff, through my agricultural work, through just life in general, I am very consumptive. I consume a lot. Mm-hmm. I just consume. Be it food, be it this, be it that. And at some point, I had to think about that, not just in the context of myself and my health and what my body can actually take on, but also in the context of other people, in the context of people who don't have those resources, people who are locked up, people who can't consume. And that affected my Black August practice, some years ago. And now it's to the point to where, I'm not just doing Black August. When I start Black August, I end it 3 months later. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing a master cleanse for 3 months. The next time I'll chew anything will be in November. But that's me.
Right.
That's where I've built to. I wouldn't advise that for anybody.
Right.
Well, unless that's your thing. Right. This is my thing. Mm-hmm. And I've seen people do beautiful, beautiful things with themselves and other people.
So like what?
So there was a sister in California, and part of her Black August regiment was feeding people, and she was Laotian, and she would just prepare food for people. I mean, gangs of it, and that was like the whole month, and you could come through there and get, lumpias or rolls or whatever. You could just get food, and it would be vegetarian, but it would be free, and it would be her, just doing her culinary thing and giving love that way. I've seen, people give of their talent technically, of course, like Sunny.
Like Sunny. Right? That's the first thing I thought.
But also, DJ Revolution, artists, paintings, Sophia Dawson, just people who donate their
skill,
right, their skill set, their love, their passion, the thing that is no brainer to them. They donate it, and it don't be nothing. They don't ask for nothing. It'd be a big painting of a tool or something. They don't nothing, just bang, there you go. Mm-hmm. You'll be like, wow, that's how you do it. Yes, that's what I can do. It's what makes me feel good on Black August. Is this what I want to donate or contribute or whatever? And it's not performative. It's not ego based because they're not getting anything. They're not getting any finance. Not getting any material. They're not getting anything. They just
right.
And that's, for me, that's beautiful. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, because one of the things that you said before we were talking about is that this is not just another form of political education. You don't just learn about it, you participate. Yeah,
so when we were talking before, I know you had said some things to me that mirrored a lot of the work that I've seen other people do. And I've seen you work, I've seen you do your thing, and part of your thing, or just as a fly on a wall, outside looking in at YahNé, what I get a lot of observation and participation. Almost like you're looking and you're like, oh, okay. And then you go and do whatever, you know. And so observation and participation to me is like just base things. Mm-hmm. Look at it, mm-hmm. observe it, check it out, turn it upside down, inside out, and then participate in your own way. You don't have to participate with what you observe. You can participate with what you observe, but you can also just go over there and start doing YahNé thing. Mm-hmm. You know, I observed it. Now I'm going to participate in it in my own way. I may participate in it with you, but I can participate but that is a learning process that is invaluable. Mm. You know, if you just observe, like we do in America a lot, and then sit at home and be like, yeah, blah, blah, you see what YahNé did? Oh, that was whack, or that was great, or whatever. That's actually not participation. Right. You know, in the context of, okay, now I'm going to get out. And YahNé did that. I ain't like the way she did it. I'm going to tweak mine a little bit and do it like this. Mm-hmm. And so that whole piece, and I see that in you, you know, and that's a big part of myself also. You know, I'm just watching, I'm learning, you know, in that learning process, in that vulnerability process, you're watching people, you learn it. Then you have to be vulnerable enough to go and try whatever piece of whatever it is, you know, and it's not always easy to have some information, just a little information, something you've observed. You haven't done anything. You're just looking at it. You're looking at it good though. It's not just, I'm looking at it. I may be
studying.
Right. Yeah. And I may interact a little bit, but when I go over here to actually participate in it, it's like I'm building a new thing, or I'm trying my own. That's the learning process. Yeah. And I may fall, it may break, it may do whatever. I may look back at them and say, somehow and blah, blah, blah. But this process is so important, you know, to us in general, to groups. I've seen orgs, I've seen individuals, you know, kind of have this process here and then here, you know. Both of them are equally as important, you know, but, you know, observation and participation, don't just observe. Right. Don't not observe and then just try to jump in there and participate without even, and we have both of those situations in the movement. Yeah. People just jump in, you know, people didn't observe, people who observe and then don't jump in, you know, so, but I think, that a lot of us, are trying to find ways to participate, and sometimes it's productive, sometimes it's not productive, but it's important that we try to, you know, do observation and participation. And I think George did a lot of that. You know, you know, looking and seeing and snap, and then trying different things, you know, and yeah, so that's a big part of education for me. I think we have an institutional style education, which is, you go to school and 12 and then you get the doctorates and blah, blah, blah. And that has some value. It has absolutely no value in the context of learning about yourself. Right. Now, observation and observation, that, you know, it does, because you're going to participate at some point, and that participation is going to bring some pros or cons, but it's going to be knowledge. And I'm not saying it's guaranteed that you're going to get all good and you're going to be rich $1 million. None of that. I'm saying that those experiences in that you're going to
gain knowledge of yourself, gain knowledge of the movement and what people are doing. Some of the things that I know that are happening in Philly as it relates to Black August, because there's like the part that you were talking about, like that personal interaction, the personal practice, and then there's some communal efforts that are happening. And so, you know, there are a lot of teach-ins that are happening all around the country, which is really great. And there's a collection of cohorts that are in Philly and New Jersey and New York that are coming together to do some things together in that way. So there's, of course, quite a number of activities that are being planned for the 21st of August, because this year marks the 50th anniversary of George's assassination. And so that's an important date for the movement and as a whole, Black August, no Black August, right? And so there's a lot that's happening regarding that. And one of the things that some of us are doing, in addition to a teach-in that's going to be happening on the 21st that we're planning right now, we also have a daily power hour. We've called it the Black August Power Hour, where we have from noon until 1 every day, Eastern time, noon to 1 Eastern every day. We're inviting people to come together. And in that time, we actually are spending a period of time exercising together. So Excellent. We're doing we're doing some stretches and jumping jacks, running in place, crunches, push-ups, and punching, like, getting that, because I learned from working with a personal trainer myself. That's a real workout, just trying to throw those punches. And you need to be able to throw punches if you want to be a revolutionary, right? So we have that going on. And then we're reading 10 pages a day of Blood in My Eye. And so we started yesterday, day 1 of Black August, and we started with the preface. And so each day we'll have somebody who actually will read those 10 pages out loud. Sure. And that way, if a person has a different learning style or, they don't have the book or whatever, they still are able to participate. And then we have a little discussion afterwards about it. And we've done it just already one day, and it was really great. And I'm excited about learning together. I already feel like I'm going to be stronger by the 21st, and then I can continue to maintain that practice. And maybe we would be able to start study groups down the line that can go beyond August, that just enables us to continue to do it, even if not every day. So that's one of the things that's happening. But we have a couple of concerts that are going to be happening this month. There's a range of communally based activities that are elevating the message of Black August and bringing community together, both to learn and to be encouraged to practice in that way. And I really appreciate understanding about the personal practice part of it, because that was not I don't feel like that was something that really had been clicking for me, is the part where I could enter the month of August and prepare to maybe like do some reading every day. That I haven't been reading a lot. I haven't been reading, and I want to. I used to walk down the street reading books, tripping over the tree trunks, but I'm just so busy that I haven't had time. Actually, every time I send out an email and Ajmu gets an email from me, he responds, "Are you studying?" So I know that I should be doing that, but, and I want to be doing that, but I haven't found the time. And so this Black August activity was something that was really supportive of that. And so I was really excited about it, but knowing that I can go into and think of Black August as a time to carve out ways for my growth that I could potentially then better maintain over the course of the rest of the year, is an idea that you introduced to me that I really had not fully grasped. And that's something that I really appreciate. Whether I actually also have times when I will not drink. I don't really take breaks from weed, but I have times that I won't drink. Right. And I'm like, okay, so I could actually use Black August for that, because I do that because I drink every day. So I want to give my liver a break, and I would just do it from time to time. That's something that I can use Black August for, as well. And thinking about that, how can I enter Black August in ways that will, strengthen my own development based on where I am, where I think I need to go? What are some practices that I can implement in order to support my goals of my own self-development and self-betterment? I think that's a really important message to get across, that that's a part of what Black August is about. No,
I agree 110% in that. And one of the greatest things about, this holiday is it's about doing work, internally, externally, but it's about doing work. And how can you make a difference? How can you make a change? How can you broaden your humanity? How can you broaden your understanding of social justice movements, things like that? But one of the things, that stands out for me, and one of the things that I'm interested in kind of hearing back from you, is different people, different modes, mediums, or any resource that you have used in the past, any resource that you think could be helpful for other people, any resource, and it doesn't have to be all highfalutin and technical, whatever. You could say, Sunny, because it's a big resource, but let's talk about how you have been able to get more information, help other people with information, find other resources, not just around Black August, but let's talk about Black August resources too.
Okay. Yeah. So I think one of the things that, has really been key for me in my growth as an organizer, freedom fighter, is actually being involved in organizations. And so I think that's a key piece of so I've done my own organizing, in my community. I was like, we need to start getting involved in our elementary schools. And, so let's start trying to pull people in the community who have, cooking skills or who have this and can go into the community and actually touch the children in our community, touch the lives of the children in our community and be transformative and not wait for this outside system or, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. I've gotten involved. I did welfare work programs and I did youth work programs and all of those things. That was really what taught me how to, some of the organizing skills that I have that are more like administrative and logistical and those kinds of things. And then I began to eventually be introduced to more radical and revolutionary organizing spaces. And those spaces were the spaces that my mind sought but didn't know about. Sure. And so, because I'm reading certain kinds of literature, but I didn't know where the community was that would actually embrace this thinking and help me to begin to deepen my analysis of things and to expand and all of those things. And so being connected to organizations, I think is really key, finding the organizations that are out there. And I think from the organization's perspective, for myself as an example, I think that I would have been connecting with these resources from a much younger age if I had been able to find them. Right. And so there's a kind of circle that exists that's not as bad now because there's a lot more these marches and these rallies that have happened since Rebellion Summer that have more people aware of different organizing spaces and things that are out there. Right. But I think that there is an impetus there's an imperative rather for organizing spaces to actually do as much as possible to expose community members to their existence, because I'm not the only one who couldn't find them. And so that results in my growth starting later than it maybe could have and would have. And so,
well, I agree 110%. I'll just say quickly is that there's a thin line in a not-for-profit, thing and how we actually get information. And are they actually giving us information? Are they helping us to get the information? Are they just getting checks to move on and keep it next year, whatever the issue is next year? But, I agree 110 that, it's a slippery slope for some young people and older people too. But I think it's important that we try to help people over that hump of trying to find information, trying to find orgs that will support and allow them to participate. And so that has been for me also when I was younger, even though I was the son of a political prisoner and stuff like that, I couldn't wrap my head around, all of the orgs and where to start at kind of sort of, right. And who was, more trustworthy and efficient and long in the tooth and all of those things. And so there is some work that we could do in helping people to just find or start in a process of trying to find information and orgs and things like that. To one of my favorites, that initially I really didn't understand the importance of the Freedom Archives, but Freedom Archives is very important, specifically in the context of they have audio, they have books, they have video, they got CD, whatever, all content of freedom fighters.
Yeah.
Not just Black ones, from Trotsky and them all the way to and prior, just people who have fought for humanity, has raised humanity to a certain level. And without these people, we would be back in some times or what have you. Yeah. And so this resource to me is one of the key resources, not just for Black August. They got a gang of George stuff and a gang of Black August stuff. But if we can help people, I think it's important that they have some places that have a history of doing the work and not being exploitative and not jumping on to the next issue or the next phrase, catchphrase or what have you. And so What do you think?
That Freedom Archives is a great resource, and that's freedomarchives.com. So that's a good one. I think that when it comes to really learning and understanding the plight of political prisoners, a really good resource is National Jericho Movement.
Yes.
And their website is thejerichomovement.com.
Yes. Excellent org. Been doing work around our PPs for a long time.
Yeah. And started by people who are liberated, political prisoners. So that's, also key is like the people who are and actually know the struggle being
and are part of the org.
Yeah. There's Prison Radio that has that allows people to hear the voices of people who are incarcerated. Mm-hmm. They're prisonradio.org. And then two that have been really, that I think really are important to me, the Black Alliance for Peace, which is blackallianceforpeace.com, is the organization that I worked with for years. Mm-hmm. And I really see not only the way that they helped sharpen, just by being a member, helped sharpen my own analysis, but also I can just see, like, when you look at so many of the people in the organization with a range of experiences, a range of identities, a range of Black identities, a range. I mean, even though there is like a supporter network as well, a range of ages and generations all coming together and really sharpening themselves very seriously, as it relates to addressing issues around the war against Black life all around the world, certainly including here, in the States. And so blackallianceforpeace.com, they also have a lot of articles and things. There's a lot of information that people can get there that way. And Black Agenda Report, which, just wanted to honor the life of, our recently lost brother, Glenn Ford, who was one of the founders and was the editor-in-chief of Black Agenda Report. But it's just a resource for such great information. Always on point and, very serious. I mean, Glenn was on his deathbed working, he very serious. He understood the importance of that outlet, and that's blackagendareport.com. And there's a new resource that's being developed by young people who are inspired by the work of like Black Agenda Report and Glenn, and they're also members actually of the Black Alliance for Peace, that being Hood Communists. And so that's
I'm not familiar with Hood Communists.
Yeah. It's a younger outlet, that the editors are both in their 20s. They're younger people, but very studied, very serious, very solid analysis as well. And I think that supporting that outlets, is a great approach as well. And there's great information that comes through that for people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you think about, these outlets for people to be able to further their growth and their development, do you have any insights around or experiences of yourself where you were able to use orgs or other resources to help you develop your ideological or where you are now? How do you grow? How you grew from these different orgs? And
yeah, certainly. I mean, I definitely, sometimes people are surprised. Crystal is a close comrade of mine. The two of us were having a conversation, and she was completely surprised to know that I had done a lot of work in electoral politics because, of my position now around electoral politics. And it was the work that I did in electoral politics that helped me to gain the position of that's some bullshit that I have right now. But
observation and participation?
Yes, observation and participation. Yes.
It made you say, after the participation was
yeah, this I need to get out of here. But through that, I actually met Ajmu Baraka, who is the founder of the Black Alliance for Peace, and was very much nurtured from that environment. So I really, really have a massive appreciation for the Black Alliance for Peace. And it's one of the reasons why I certainly speak to the value of being a part of an organization, and an organization like BAP, which is such, Ajmu says we keep the politics in command. And so even, for example, what's been going on with Cuba more recently and the confusion that was being sold by the U.S. through Black Cubans, predominantly outside of Cuba, so that they could begin to build up an intervention campaign. I was able to have people in the Black Alliance for Peace who I could talk through the nuances of this. So people are like, this is nuance, but then like, what does that nuance look like? And so to be able to talk through that and really take what I was understanding and sharpen my own analysis, that's something that I'm always able to do. And that actually BAP is always holds itself to a standard of doing for its members. So whenever because there's always something happening that can be confusing, and there's always a propaganda mechanism that is sowing that confusion in the interest of the imperialist mechanisms that are seeking to dominate the world. And so having a resource that will constantly help you to overcome that is really, really important. And so I feel like BAP is that for me. What about you?
So, I have a kind of plethora of different orgs that I like and support. I won't name them all here because I'll probably miss some, and that would not be a good look. But, there are these different orgs with different strengths and weaknesses. One of them does work around the children of political prisoners, and to me, I never received their services as the child of a political prisoner, but my daughter did, and my son did, and other political prisoners' children did. So those type of orgs. So one of the things that, I'm committed to is that similar type of work of helping other people with their internal issues, family issues sometimes that arise because you have someone incarcerated for a long amount of time. And so I do mentoring from that space. But I think, there are some key orgs. There used to be a thing where, and it still is in some spaces, where people would say at a speaking engagement, at, somewhere in an interview, they would say, join an organization, because it's, and I support that, but join an organization after you've done the research on the organization.
Right.
It used to be just, let's join something. Don't be not, organized. But, check what you're observe, and then participate, and join the organization, but observe the organization, study the organization, make sure that the organization is doing what you would like to see done. Make sure that the organization, is principled. A lot of the work in this organization space, due to capitalism, due to the Western sphere, has become unprincipled, specifically in the context of how it's financed.
Right.
So
yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, and particularly if you can find, and we're in Philadelphia where there's like a plethora of options, right? But there are places where there may be an organization pops up and now that's the organization. Yes. And that's, that's a reality. But particularly when you have multiple organizations that are working, it's also, I think, would be valuable, to your point, to observe multiple organizations and see and get some comparisons, see how they relate to each other, see how the individuals are engaging with each other, to see if it's the environment that's right for you. Right. I think that, going back again to BAP, and I always speak highly of BAP because it's just been such an amazing organizing space for me. And the thing about BAP that's great is that it's a national organization, so people can join it from anywhere. But they don't, to your point, accept grant, like foundation funding and things like that, particularly because their ideals and the politics have to be core and can't be compromised. Sure. And always, again, like, keep those politics and those ideals at the forefront of what drives the organizing space. And sure. So it's a great model to have. And even if you go from there to other organizations, you have like a really solid foundation of what you can expect and how you can be measuring other organizations. I think that's really great. No,
I agree 110% in that context. And I would say just a little bit further that the whole part of the attack on our movements is to, for lack of better terms, try to buy people out, and not even try.
Yeah, they're doing it,
you know,
all over.
And so it's very important that I say in this whole Black August conversation is to just know and be aware that we live in a capitalist society and that capital has been injected to get you off your square, to get you to be unprincipled, to get you to do unprincipled things. And it's a reality, not just for our orgs. It's a reality for people doing work in the community. It's a reality in the COINTELPRO space that, happened with a lot of people you see in the Fred Hampton movie or what have you. But it's a real thing and you have to be conscious of it. You should be conscious of it. You shouldn't just be assuming that this org is great and they're going to cut you a check to have a job there, to be a canvasser or whatever it may be, because there's a little more to it.
Yeah. I think capital and celebrity are two things that are used to undermine people in the movement. And to that point, a lot of times people don't even understand that it's being used on them.
True.
So and by the time they could have the understanding, they've gotten too much of a relationship with the capital and celebrity resources so that they don't want to see it. They may refuse to see it, or they just have become so compromised. And so if one does not want to end up down those lines, you should be really, really diligent about being attentive to where you're getting your resources from, being attentive to where your organization is getting its resources from, being attentive to who is elevating you or who is elevating your organization, how much elevation it's getting and why. Because generally, absolutely, that we do not live in a system that is going to resource its demise, right? So it's not going to elevate the people who will actually effectively take it down, and it's not going to make life comfortable for them. So, we should be keeping that in mind. If that's what's happening, then they probably aren't the revolutionary organization. So if you're looking for that, you might want to look a little further, right? I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And the information and just being here with you and being able to share our little information that we have with people, to me means a lot.
Yeah. And hopefully if anybody sees this and wants to maybe refine a little bit or add a little bit, that's welcome. We're still here, vulnerable and learning and ready to be refined, ready to be sharpened. We're here to sharpen, to contribute and to receive a contribution around that. Yes. But hopefully there's some people who will see this and be able to learn in the same way that I was learning from our conversation. That was that learning that I wanted to share in doing this.
And thank you so much for sharing that information for me. And thank you for being here with me to try to help Black August and put out, information and be vulnerable and have information come back to us.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.